Hello, BookTube. Months ago, Christopher Russell on his channel made a random video where he just randomly recommended a handful of books to you. It was really interesting, and it was all I needed to start doing that myself. Recommending books is one of my favorite things to do for people. And has been for a very long time. I think there's a cogent argument to be made that a large part of a book critic's job, a published book critic's job, is recommending books. So it has been for a long, long time. And most people get that. In my life, there have only been a handful of people who thought, oh, well, if you love recommending books, recommend me a book. And I say, okay, well, I've got a dozen questions to ask first. They say, no, just recommend me something. It's not exactly how it works. Certainly it's not how I'm going to do it. That's the whole fallacy that I have with the star rating system on Goodreads. But I've made a series of these, and since Joe Spivey dubbed Christopher Russell the cartoon hedgehog of BookTube, I have been calling him the Hedgehog Book Recommendations, and I thought I would only do one. A lot of you like them, to put it mildly, a lot of you do. So I've made a whole bunch of them, and I imagine that someone somewhere will make a playlist. I don't know how to do that, but someone will be able to do that. This channel really needs playlists, doesn't it? Lots of them. I should get a guest to work on that. But, of course, that guest would have to have all of my passwords and all of my login information, and what guest has that? So anyway, of course, Christopher Russell was here as a guest just a little while ago, and after a week at Hyde Cottage, like most people, he felt the urgent need to get as far away from the United States as possible. So he is now traveling in doing missionary work in Moravia. Or is it the missionary position in Moldavia? It's one of those two. Anyway, I thought for this Hedgehog book recommendation video, we would concentrate on travel writing, which is a favorite thing of mine. I've done a lot of traveling in my life, so we'll start with a very oldie but a goodie. This one is traveling not only in a typical place, the Grand Tour of Europe, but also in time. This is by Cornelia Otis Skinner and Emily Kimbrough, and this is Our Hearts Were Young and Gay. And you can tell right away from this cover that you are going to the days of bathtubs and jalopies and coaches and steamships. And this is the two of them going on a madcap tour, a massive traveling junket. And it's very funny. It's very whimsical. There's a thing that I need to warn you about, I guess, which is that some of the humor in this book has dated. That does not mean that we should dig up Cornelia Otis Skinner and Emily Kimbrough and kill them all over again. Or dig them up, sit their bodies up on chairs in the cemetery so that we can take pictures and cancel them on Twitter. That doesn't mean that. It just means that the humor has dated. But this is delightful and funny. So I wanted to start the list with that one. Then we'll go to something longer and much meatier. This is by Barbara Exuti Harrison. I've mentioned this book many, many times. It's called Italian Days, in which she goes down the whole of Italy, travels extensively in Italy, and writes about it. Now, that is a common thing to do. A lot of you have probably done vacations or tourist roundabouts in Italy. I've spent a lot of time in Italy, but this is beautifully written. Beautifully written, and it's not as beautifully written as some things on this list, but it also has the added benefit of just exactly the register of slightly cynical humor that I love. So the people in the places that Harrison is visiting throughout this book are constantly saying quotes that were meant well, but that she can also position in a slightly quasi-ironic light, which is terrific. It's an incredible talent. It's an amazing. It's a long book. It's an incredibly thing to read. Then we have something by Darmon Richter. This does count as travel. This is Chernobyl: A Stalker's Guide, and it is a guide to the Chernobyl Forbidden Zone, to abandoned towns, especially Pripyat, by a man who has been a tour guide. There are tours that you can take, and also a man who has done a lot of illicit traveling that you're not allowed to do in those areas. you are definitely not allowed, as far as I know, to go and camp there or to wander around unsupervised. And yet people do. I've read and reviewed a couple of memoirs from people who did that. I don't know that I would ever do that. I don't know that I would ever go to these places now that they are irradiated. But to each their own. I don't know. I'm not completely up on the facts of how dangerous it would be. This book seems to imply that it's not all that dangerous if you're being even slightly responsible. Basically, it boils down to the age-old traveler's adage of don't drink the water. Only in this case, definitely don't drink the water. But very, very interesting, especially since now we are all more familiar with Chernobyl than we used to be. I lived through it. I watched it happen. I was sitting right next to reporters who were writing about it, trying to get as much information as they could and double-check it. But even so, we're all more familiar with Chernobyl now since the miniseries, since we've all seen the miniseries, which is so incredible from start to finish. So not a dramatic decision wrong anywhere in that miniseries. Just amazing. That this has an extra resonance. Then we'll move to another classic. I would say that Our Hearts Were Young and Gay is a classic for travel writing. Nobody remembers it anymore, even though it had a movie, I think. A very well-received movie. But we'll move to another classic. There are a couple of immortal classics on this list. I couldn't leave them off a Hedgehog list of travel writing for all things. This is A Time of Gifts by Patrick Leigh Farmer, with this New York Review of Books cover that has all of those ice skaters and a snowbound village and, just for good measure, a pterodactyl. And this is Farmer's immortal account of starting a gigantic walking journey when he was just a boy, when he was in his teens. And again, that kind of thing has been done. In fact, there have been a dozen books where people tried to retrace his steps. The thing that puts this on the list is that Farmer's writing is just unbelievably enchanting. This is, I would argue, one of the two best written books on this list. And it's been reprinted many, many, many times. New York Review of Books has reprinted it, so you don't have it. Your library will certainly be able to get you a copy of this, and you will remember it. You will be glad you read it. Along the same lines, maybe a slight hair less, is this. It's Eric Newby, A Short Walk in the Hindu Kush. No idea what this cover is, but I just grabbed things off the internet. The Hindu Kush is a wild and forbidding terrain. A lot of it is, and Newby is a great travel writer, a great travel adventure writer. He wrote half a dozen books, I think, and they're all worth reading. But this is his most famous one, I think, probably because this recounts adventures that are at least theoretically close to something that a reader might be able to do himself. Whereas a lot of the stuff that Eric Newby wrote about was him chronicling the dying of a previous age, so you couldn't do it if you wanted to. Well worth your time. All of Eric Newby is well worth your time. Then we have something, Paul Heine. This is a book of his called Farewell, Mr. Puffin, a small boat voyage to Iceland, where he takes a small boat, a couple of small boats on this list, traveling north to northern waters and hoping, among other things. I mean, this book is full of nautical lore. It's full of the people that he meets and the adventures that he has. And all of that is well written, gamefully written. But along the way, in the narrative, he is also hoping that he is going to encounter puffins, the bird on the cover there. They are synonymous with appearing in the locations where he is set to travel in huge numbers right when he's set to go there. And yet he barely sees any. And so this book takes on a funereal tone towards the halfway point that you just have to be ready for. That also is beautifully written, but you have to be ready for it. This is, in addition to being a terrific small boat nautical book, this is also a very reluctant encomium to a species that he comes to the only possible conclusion is dying, is vanishing from the world. And I haven't double-checked that. Since I read this, I haven't double-checked to see if that is true. Are puffin colony numbers in catastrophic decline? Is that something that scientists are worried about? I haven't checked to see. But in the world of the book, it's arresting. It's a little dark, but it's arresting. Okay, then we have something that's probably going to be hard to find. If I ever found a hardcover with this dust jacket, I've seen it once, and foolishly I ignored it. I didn't buy it. because I thought it would be everywhere. This is Irving and Electra Johnson. They had a ship. They had a brigantine named the Yankee. A glorious thing. And they traveled with it. And they wrote a number of books about it. This is a collection of miscellaneous stories. This is Yankee's Wander World. How I wish I had everything that this couple has written. I got a copy, I think I showed it on this channel years and years ago. I got a copy of Yankee Sails the Nile. And I think it was part of a Brattle Haul, and I talked about it at the time, and one of you immediately perked up and said, "Oh my God, I read that book at the urging of my parents. They're long gone. I haven't even thought about it since. Oh my God, if you ever see another copy." Of course, a person like that writes me an email. I'm going to send them the book, and I did. I haven't seen any of the books by this pair yet after that. But this one is terrific. What I wouldn't give to see a copy. Who knows if it's collectible, if it's expensive online. But they have a very winning tongue-in-cheek humor about them. Their books on sailing are wonderful, and Sailing the Yankee are wonderful. Then we have someone named Thor Hansen. Wish I were named Thor Hansen. This is his book, The Impenetrable Forest, where he goes to what is now the Impenetrable Forest National Park or Game Preserve or whatever it is in Uganda, which is home to incredibly forbidding terrain. First of all, some of the forests in Uganda are incredibly forbidding, incredibly difficult to hike through. Not that that's often legal, but in addition to that, the area is home to a huge variety of exotic wildlife, including, famously, most of the world's gorillas. Most of the world's mountain gorillas live in Uganda. And there are, as far as I know, I can't imagine doing this, but as far as I know, when I traveled in Africa, this sort of thing did not exist. But now I think you can pay to go on a gorilla tour in Uganda, where the guides will take you on a trail, and with any luck, if you want to call it luck, a troop of gorillas will come by and see you and maybe examine you, get up close to you. There are video clips on YouTube of people sitting there. Well, a 300-pound male gorilla comes up to them and touches their hair and pokes at their jacket and maybe rubs against them and then moves on. Thing could rip your head off in one gesture. I guess no one's heads have ever been ripped off, but still, it seems like an unnecessary gamble. But this is beautiful. It's beautifully done, beautifully written. Another example on this list of a book where you will be going for the adventure. You'll be going to the book for the adventure, but you'll be staying for how grippingly written it is. And then we have a book that I've recommended before, and an author that I've recommended before. He doesn't always please me, but when he does, he pleases me quite a bit. And this is The Kingdom by the Sea by Paul Theroux, where he decides to take a trip all the way around the perimeter of Great Britain. All the way along the shoreline, trying never to venture more than a few hundred feet inland at any time, depending on, what the topography is like. And I loved it. I read it first as a mass market paperback in the United States 40 years ago with this cover, and I would love to have a hardcover of this. That would be great. To revisit it would be great. Thoreau doesn't always please me because often he seems to be in love with himself a little too much. I mean, that's endemic to travel writers, but still, they can take it too far. And sometimes I think he does, but not here. Not in this. No, this is just wonderful. Then we have humor. Much like Our Hearts Were Young and Gay, it is difficult to sustain humor on the written page. Any of you who don't think that's true, you think, oh, come on, you just crack wise for a while. Try it and see. It's really hard to do. It's one of the reasons why I venerate Mark Twain so much. It's really hard to sustain that for 100 pages, 150 pages, 200 pages. And this author always manages to do that. This is from the Vintage Departure series. This cover is from the old Vintage Departure series. Years ago, the publisher, did a run of books called Vintage Departures that was all dedicated to travel writing, new and old. And that series is incredible. I know I've said this before, but if you encounter a trade paperback in your used bookstore and it says Vintage Departures on the bottom and you've never heard of it before, get it. Because you're going to love it. Because the editors were on the ball. And they did, oh God, years and years ago, 50 years ago, they did Into the Heart of Borneo by Red O'Hanlon. That's what it looks like. The Vintage Departures livery looks like that. Don't miss these books when you see them. And this is about Red O'Hanlon and, believe it or not, the poet James Fenton. What a travel companion. I've had some odd travel companions myself, including a writer, so I guess I can't knock it too much. But they decide to go into the deepest jungles of Borneo, which is a terrible idea. That is an absolutely terrible idea. They are saying that they're inhospitable just doesn't do it justice. Everything there is beautiful in those forests, and everything in those forests can kill you. It's just... and almost everything tries to in the course of this book. Their trip is, by any rational measure, a disaster. But it's funny from start to finish because of O'Hanlon, and also touching. In parts, it's touching. This is an angst-free and a misery-free experience in the misery of travel. That element of travel writing and that element of travel itself that is maybe best epitomized in The Worst Journey in the World, that book. This is a pretty miserable journey, but you're going to be laughing through the whole book because of the author's skill. And the jungles of Borneo are impenetrable. Take it from me, they are an excruciatingly difficult place to travel in. You just can't relax at any time. You just can't relax because they're so inhospitable. The area is so adverse to you. And this next book, the author, Wendy Simmons, goes to a place that's even more inhospitable, even more aggressively antagonistic to you. And yet, this place has flush toilets. It has electric lights. It has paved streets. This is My Holiday in North Korea, where she goes to North Korea and writes a travel book about her experiences there. And she's a funny writer, a very smart, very funny writer. And there are times at the beginning of this book when you will think, okay, well, somehow that's what you're going to do. You're going to do an absurdist take on the incredibly ruthless, shutters down private dictatorship of North Korea. You're going to do a ludicrous, wacky take on that. But she can't do it. That might have been her original intent, but she can't sustain it. Because these are actual human beings that don't know anything about the outside world. They don't know anything about freedom. And I don't just mean the freedom to own a car. Like, there are plenty of countries that look on Instagram at Americans and say, well, they have some freedoms I don't have. But at least they know what freedom is. At least they know what they're missing. And they have small variations of it themselves. The North Koreans don't have any of that. They have no idea how miserable they are. They have no idea that they are playthings for one man. They're grateful that they're playthings for one man. I have lots and lots of thoughts on North Korea. I do not understand why a succession of American presidents have allowed this blot on human rights to exist in the world. And if your first response is they're nukes, well, I think there are all kinds of ways around that. I don't understand why there is still a North Korea. I really don't. I haven't understood that in the whole of my life. Pretty much the whole of my life. So this isn't always funny. In fact, there are times when it's absolutely heartbreaking. And props to the author. She captures both sides of that with equal literary skill. This is a really eye-opening book, even though it doesn't have leeches or crocodiles or screaming toucans or whatever. Then we'll move on to, I think this is our last book. This is David Farley. I think this is new. I loved it. It's called Underground Worlds, a guide to the spectacular subterranean places. And we're not talking here just about caves, just carved out caves of rock. We're talking about all kinds of things. Subterranean subway stations, cities. Oh God, this is just so fascinating. So fascinating. I have been to a couple of the places that he describes, but I'm not a big one. I do not understand spelunkers. I really don't. Especially the kind of cave people who don't just cave explore, they also cave dive. where they're not just walking around, they see a little tunnel that's barely any bigger than they are, and they start crawling into it without having any idea if they can back up, without having any idea if they can keep going forward. I do not understand that at all, not in the slightest. That has to be adrenaline junkies. It just has to be. When I see an account of something like that, of a cave diver, someone who's crawling through a tunnel that's just about as big as their body, they could get stuck at any minute. The first thing I think about are the professional surfers, or just active surfers, who surf in there are a couple of places in the world where the surf breaks, the famous surf breaks that are really big and really epic, are also absolutely suffused with sharks. And they go there anyway. And they do it anyway. And it's for the adrenaline. I know two people, they're not professionals, but they are diehard potheads surfers. And they go surfing intentionally an hour before dawn, every day. The exact time when great white sharks and tiger sharks are hunting inshore. They do it every day. That has got to be adrenaline addiction. That has got to be. But this isn't that. Obviously, you can see tourists standing around there on the cover. This is, it barely touches on that. This is to show you that when it comes to subterranean adventures, there's so much more out there than Carlsbad Caverns. So much more. And even Carlsbad Caverns, if you go on a tour of Carlsbad Caverns, at one point in the tour, at the lowest point in the tour guide will tell you that the caverns go on for a much greater distance, and they keep going down. But we're not going there. So you get a sense of all the kinds of things that you could be missing. And David Farley does a great job in this book of profiling a whole bunch of those places. So that will end our Hedgehog travel-themed recommendations deep underground. but I'll probably be back. The rest of you seem to like these recommendations, so I'll keep making them if you keep liking them. But anyway, that's it for today. I'm going to wrap this up and check in with the Hedgehog himself. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.